My own son threw me out with nothing but 20 bucks and a garbage bag full of my belongings, and told me my place was outside. Before we dive into what happened next, and trust me, you won't believe where this goes, take a second to subscribe to Anonymous Confessions. Hit that like button and tell me in the comments what time it is where you're watching from right now. I read every single one. I'm Delbert. I'm 67 years old, and until a few months ago, I lived in the house where I took my first steps. The house where my father carried me in as a newborn. I spent 42 years as an aviation mechanic for a major airline, hydraulic systems, brakes on aircraft. When you've spent 4 decades making sure planes don't fall out of the sky, you learn something important. You learn that details matter. Every part counts. Every connection tells a story. I just wish I'd paid that same kind of attention to my own son. Chris wasn't always like this. I remember him at 8 years old, pressed against the front window, waiting for me to come home from my shift. He'd run outside, nearly tripping over his own feet, holding up crayon drawings of airplanes. He told everyone his dad fixed flying machines. But somewhere along the way, that little boy disappeared. I think it started when he met Lisa. She's beautiful, tall, blonde, always dressed like she's heading to a garden party. But there's something behind her eyes, something cold, something watching. You know, stories like this, real family drama stories, they stick with you. If you're enjoying this, go ahead and hit subscribe to Anonymous Confessions and drop a comment if you've ever had someone you trusted turn on you. I'd really like to know I'm not alone in this. The last 2 years were the worst. Chris started calling me old man instead of dad. Lisa would walk past me like I was a piece of furniture. They'd have conversations that stopped the second I walked into the room. They moved in temporarily, Chris said, just a few months while they saved for their own place. That was 2 years ago. I spent most of my time in the garage working on my project, a 1947 Indian Chief motorcycle I'd been restoring for 5 years. The smell of oil and metal, the feel of bringing something broken back to life. It was my sanctuary. If only I'd realized that while I was restoring that bike, my own life was being dismantled piece by piece. It all came crashing down on a Monday afternoon. I'd been in the garage since sunrise, finally got the transmission reassembled. My hands were covered in grease, but my heart felt light. The bike was almost done. I walked into the house around 4 in the afternoon. That's when I found them. Chris and Lisa were in my bedroom. They were throwing my clothes into black garbage bags. Not suitcases, not boxes, garbage bags, like I was trash being taken to the curb. "What are you doing?" I asked. My voice barely came out as a whisper. Chris spun around. The expression on his face was something I'd never seen before. Pure contempt. "What does it look like, old man? We're cleaning house." "Those are my things. This is my room." Lisa laughed, actually laughed. "Your room? This is our house now. You've been living here rent-free for too long." Rent-free, in my own house, the house my father built with his own hands in 1962. "Chris, son, what's going on? We can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." His voice was sharp as broken glass. "You're done here. Your place is outside, old man. You understand? Outside." He grabbed my arm. My own son grabbed my arm and started dragging me toward the door. I tried to resist, but at 67, I'm not the man I used to be. Lisa opened the front door. She had a triumphant smile on her face. "Finally," she said, "our house will be free." Chris shoved me through the doorway. I stumbled, catching myself on the porch railing. He threw a garbage bag after me. It split open, my clothes scattered across the front lawn. Then he pulled out his wallet, took out a $20 bill and threw it at my feet. "There, can't say I didn't give you anything." The door slammed. I heard the deadbolt click, then another lock, then the chain. I stood there on my own front porch, looking at my clothes scattered across the grass, that $20 bill lying in the dirt. Behind me, through the window, I could see them hugging, celebrating. Lisa was actually jumping up and down. I picked up that $20, folded it carefully, put it in my pocket. Then I gathered what I could carry in an old gym bag and walked to my truck. That night, I slept in a Walmart parking lot, listening to shopping carts rattling across the asphalt. The next morning, I drove to my bank. The young teller gave me a sympathetic look. Maybe she could see it in my eyes. Maybe I just looked like what I was, a homeless old man. $23,670. That's what 42 years of work had left me. It sounds like a lot until you realize rent in Phoenix eats through that in less than a year. I sat in my truck doing math on the back of a deposit slip. I couldn't afford rent. I couldn't go back to my house. I couldn't impose on anyone. That's when I saw it. A flyer on the community board. House for sale. Owner desperate. $18,000. I drove to the address, 20 minutes away. The neighborhood clearly seen better days. Broken sidewalks, overgrown weeds, houses with peeling paint. And at the end of the street, the most run-down property of them all. The owner was nailing a for sale sign in the front yard. Tired-looking man in his 50s. Is this place really $18,000? He looked me up and down, saw the desperation I was trying to hide. For you? $17,500. I'm moving to California next week. Just want it gone. I looked at the house. Shattered windows, missing roof tiles. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. Through the broken windows, I could see water-stained walls and a floor that looked like it might collapse. "I'll take it," I said. We went to a notary that afternoon. I paid cash. By 6 evening, I owned a house that most people wouldn't stable a horse in. The next weeks were about survival. Days started at sunrise. I patched holes in the roof, fighting the Arizona heat that made the attic feel like a furnace. I replaced corroded pipes section by section with what little money I had left. No air conditioning. I couldn't afford to fix it, so I slept with all the windows open, sweating through the night. I ate cheap ramen, day-old bread from the discount rack, canned beans. I lost weight. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, the only mirror that hadn't been broken, I barely recognized myself. Gaunt cheeks, dark circles under my eyes, hands covered in cuts and calluses. But slowly, the house became livable. Not comfortable, not nice, but livable. At night, lying on a mattress I'd pulled from someone's trash pile, I'd think about Chris and Lisa. Something didn't add up. Chris was always entitled, self-centered, but this level of cruelty, this complete disregard for his own father, it felt planned. They wanted me gone, not just out of the house, they wanted me gone permanently. But why? Why now? I didn't have answers yet, but lying there in the dark, listening to my own breathing in that broken-down house, I made myself a promise. I would find out. We're almost at the end of this story, and I can't tell you how much it means that you've stayed with me. If you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to Anonymous Confessions, and drop a comment if you've ever had someone you trusted turn on you. I'd really like to know I'm not alone in this. 6 weeks passed. Then I noticed something about my truck. Old Reliable was taking longer to stop at red lights. The brake pedal felt spongy, like pressing into soft clay instead of firm resistance. I'd been an aviation mechanic for 42 years. I knew when something wasn't right. I took it to a shop I trusted. The owner, Ron, was one of those rare, honest mechanics. He put my truck on the lift. I heard him go very still underneath. "Delbert," he said. His voice had changed. Careful, controlled. "You need to see this." I knelt down. My heart started pounding. Ron pointed to the brake lines with a screwdriver. "See here and here? The metal tubing shows clear scoring, fine lines where something sharp scraped away at the surface. And around the scoring, the metal has a strange pitted texture, like acid ate into the metal." I felt my mouth dry. "What are you saying?" Ron rolled out from under the truck and stood. His expression was grim. "Someone's been sabotaging your brakes, Delbert, and they've been doing it for a while. Look at the progression. Old damage here, newer damage there. This wasn't a one-time thing. Someone's been systematically weakening these lines. Probably over months, maybe longer. How long until they'd fail? At this rate, a month, maybe 2. And when they failed, you'd be going highway speed. No way to stop. The lines would rupture. You'd lose all brake fluid." I felt cold despite the Arizona heat. My hands were shaking. "Who had access to your truck?" Ron asked. And that's when it hit me. Really hit me. The truck had always been parked in the garage at the Camelback Road house. The garage where I'd worked on my Indian chief. The garage where Chris had started spending more time. "Just checking on things, Dad. Making sure everything's running smooth." Chris, my son, who'd thrown me out with $20 in a garbage bag, who'd celebrated my departure like it was a holiday, who'd been helping me by checking the truck every few weeks. Chris, who stood to inherit a house worth nearly $1 million when I died. My vision blurred. I grabbed the edge of Ron's workbench to steady myself. "My son," I said. The words felt like broken glass in my throat. "My son had access. He said he was maintaining it for me." Ron's expression darkened. "You need to call the police, right now." But I made him wait 24 hours. There was something I needed to check first. I called an old family acquaintance, Dorothy Miller. She'd been the notary when my father's estate was settled back in 1998. "Dorothy, this is Delbert Stewart. I need to ask you something about my father's estate, about the house on Camelback Road." There was a pause, long enough that I thought the connection had dropped. "Delbert, your father created a living trust in 1997. I witnessed the signing. The house didn't pass to you through inheritance. It was already in the trust. You became the lifetime beneficiary. That gave you the right to live there until your death, but you never owned it outright. The trust still owns the house." I couldn't breathe. "So my son Chris can't inherit it?" "No, your son has no legal claim to that property. Never did, never will." I sat in stunned silence. Chris had been planning to kill me for a house he'd never inherit. All that patience, all that methodical planning, all that evil, for nothing. For a house that would go to a charity the moment I died. I called the police next. Detective Gordon listened without interrupting. He examined the truck himself, called in a forensics technician. "This is deliberate," she confirmed. "The pattern of damage is consistent with manual filing, and these corrosive agents aren't naturally occurring. Someone applied them multiple times over an extended period." They executed a search warrant on the Camelback Road house that same day. In the garage, they found a set of metal files with distinctive wear patterns, a bottle of brake fluid mixed with battery acid, and most damning of all, a notebook where Chris had documented every maintenance session on my truck. Dates, times, what he'd done. He'd kept a record of his own attempted murder. The morning of the arrest, I went with Detective Gordon to my old house. Chris opened the door. For just a moment, I saw the little boy who used to wait by the window for me to come home. Then his expression changed. Shock, then anger. Then, when he saw the detective behind me, fear. "Hello, son." "We need to talk about my truck." I watched the color drain from his face. "He's in prison now. 21 years. The judge gave him the maximum." Lisa filed for divorce. She's working as a waitress in Tucson, paying me back through wage garnishment for what they did. And me? I'm back in my house. The Indian chief is fully restored. I took it for a ride last week. Felt the Arizona wind in my face. Chris screamed that my place was outside. But in the end, he's the one who ended up there. And honestly, that's where this story ends.